Good evening or a good day to our viewers and listeners from Yerushalayim. We would like to speak about a topic which is quite important in the contemporary times that we're living in. And the topic is entitled Timeless Torah. Of course, the meaning of timeless Torah obviously is within the context of timeless values, of morality, of ethics, of hashkafa, of philosophy that basically has been formulated by the Chazal based on the written scripture as well as the oral tradition. In our times, which they call the modern generation, the super modern generation, so if we would ask them how to define morality, so they would simply say, and they do say, morality depends on what then and there we happen to like. Whatever values we cherish now, at this particular time, so this is moral. And it's just a happenstance, just happens to be that they happen to like it now. So what's immorality according to the modern generation? Immorality is what we dislike. So the Torah came to exclude that. Ideals, definitions of justice, of what right and what's wrong, and what path man should pursue. So this basically are Torah values that are timeless. No generation can change them, regardless of what the milieu of the generation is, whether it's liberalism, conservatism, it makes no difference. We have a set values that are Torah values, not man-made values, and they're timeless, and no one can alter them. No one has the intelligence to supersede a God-given Chazal's interpretation of Torah values. So as the point of departure is timeless Torah values, we should start with Pirkei Avos, Ethics of the Father, the second parak, which happens to be the parak that we studied this week. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai addressed the question to his Talmidim, and he said, what is the right path, the just path, righteous, pious, and just path that a person should pursue? Of course, we don't understand the question because after all, we have Taryag mitzvahs, 613 mitzvahs, Minat Torah, explained, enumerated, formulated by the Chazal. Of course, that's the right path. So the question is not so much insofar as strict halach is concerned, what the Torah tells us, and what the rabbis have enacted, different types of ordinances, but basically refers to personality traits, characteristics of the individual so far as inner world is concerned. So what would be the right path for us to develop and grow in personality and valuable, worthy characteristics that will define the inner personality? And of course, the wording of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is sheyidbak, to cling to it. Cling means day in, day out. It should be part and parcel of his DNA. It should be part of his nature. So we have four opinions. Rabbi Lezer Omer ayin toivo, a good eye. We'll see what that means. Rabbi Yeshua Omer chaver tov, a good friend. Rabbi Yosef Omer shochen tov, a good neighbor. And Rabbi Shimon says something else. Rabbi Loza ben Aruch says, Royani as diver Rabbi Loza ben Aruch, who said Leiv Toiv. So in other words, we have four basic answers. First answer is ayin toiva, a good eye. What does a good eye mean? Before we continue to try to explain the common denominator of all four, according to the interpretation of Rabbeinu Yoina, we should just say what everyone agrees upon. In other words, this is agreed upon by everyone. What does it mean, Ayin Roya? So, all the Mefarshim, starting with the Rambam, says the follows. Ayin Toiva, not Ayin Roya, Ayin Toiva. What is a Ayin Toiva? A good eye. So, it's like we mentioned a moment ago, Ayin Shiroya es Shiloi Toiva. What does that mean exactly? So the pasuk in Tildim tells us, "Ki lo yovinu el pulas Hashem, vel ma'aseh yodov yehelsein v'lo yivnein." For people pay no heed to the glorious works of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to the operation of His hands, He breaks them down. In other words, the handiwork of His hands, and does not rebuild them. What is this referring to? So all the Mefarshim say this refers to the toivus, the goodness, the loving kindness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that He bestows upon every single one. And a person must realize that if he does not express his gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for all of His loving kindness, all of His good deeds, so he will, by absence of expressing his gratitude and thanksgiving to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for what He has, this will bring about their destruction. In other words, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will destroy the kindness that He already had wrought, and He will not rebuild them. That is why it is extremely important for a person to develop this characteristic trait that's mentioned first and foremost in Pirkei Avos, the second parak, the 8th Mishnah, and this was mentioned, correct, first and foremost by Rabbi Lezel. Ayin Toiva, you have to see what you have with a good eye. Analyze it. Understand it. That every single person possesses treasures, starting with his health and other possessions, which we don't have the time to go through. But Ayin Roya means a characteristic of first and foremost seeing. Toiva. Ayin Roya Toiva, Ayin Toiva, Roya Toiva, says Rabbeinu Yoina. He has to see Toiva Etzloi, Shaloi, by him. And then he will not have any type of jealousy, he will have no type of enmity, insofar as other people are concerned, their positions, their possessions, because he'll see that everything he has is loving kindness. And ultimately, if he analyzes it and estimates it properly, he'll be happy with it. Now, Rabbeinu Yoina asks a question. Leiv Toiv, that's number 4, good heart. Of course, that is a characteristic trait. To have a good heart, sympathetic to other people, soft, sensitive, not only seeing yourself, not weaving a halo of glory upon yourself, self-glorification, self-idolization. It means a total negation of egoism, leiv toiv for others. So this is something which a person develops and grows in during the duration of his entire lifetime. However, what about shochen toiv and chaver toiv? What about that? So that's outside of the individual. Because we would interpret it to be that a person should look for a good neighborhood, to have good and fine, outstanding and noble neighbors, so he should enjoy the comfort not only of his home, but the comfort of his entire environment that's produced by good, friendly neighbors. Kind, good, friendly neighbors. So that's outside of the individual himself. He has to find it. What about a chaver tov? To have good friends, to be part of a good society? Wonderful, but that's outside of him, and we would have to look. Chipus achar chipus, have to search and try to find such a society. So we have over here a type of dichotomy. Ayin toiva, ayin sheroya toiva, either only sees good, and a leiv toiv, these are personality characteristics that depend on the person himself. It's not outside of him. It's something which he has developed to be part and parcel of his existential existence. But chaver tov, shochen tov, that's totally outside of him. So we see that the Tana, insofar as having a response to his questions, is totally inconsistent. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, it's a mistaken pshat. Shochen tov means you be a good neighbor. And even if you're involved in a type of environment, an apartment building where you have not such good neighbors, so you have to know how to be a good neighbor. You have to be a good friend. You have to know when to renounce your rights for the feelings of somebody else, and how to renounce your feelings for the rights of somebody else, even if you live in an apartment building, even if you're in a yeshiva, you're at work. So this is an arduous, laborious effort. This is avodah kosher shebamikdash. So all four are basically intrinsic characteristics of the human personality that will enable him to perfect his morality and perfect his ethic integrity. That's what Rabbeinu Yoina says. What was the dispute? Explains Rabbeinu Yoina something very fascinating. All four are necessary. A person ultimately to reach perfection morally has to have an ayin toivo. He has to be roya b'ayin toivo, starting with his own little world. He has to come to the conclusion that he has everything. If he perfects himself in ayin toivo, perfection, all other three characteristics will come easy. He'll be a shochen tov, he'll be a good neighbor, he'll be a good friend, and in addition, he'll really have a sympathetic, kind heart, altruistic and not egotistic, leiv tov. So the dispute is what number 1, 2, 3, 4 of this hierarchy will ultimately, through procuring perfection, lead to the other three. It'll make it much easier to achieve and attain the goals of the other three. So that's the machlokes. Is it ayin toivo? Is it leiv tov, shochen tov? But basically speaking, all four are necessary. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, let's say when it comes to shochen tov. So of course we understand to be a good neighbor is, as we mentioned a moment ago, a person has to know how to renounce his own rights for the rights of somebody else, has to renounce his own rights even if the feelings of somebody else will be impaired. No question about it. Nevertheless, says Rabbeinu Yoina, we have halachas. We have by a chavel, we have halachas insofar as the quality of respect and honor is due to him. And not everyone has the same level of honor and respect. Shochen, we have hilchos shreinim, right? How the Shulchan Aruch, how the neighbors have to conduct themselves. On occasion, one neighbor doesn't have to renounce his rights to another neighbor. Insofar as charity is concerned, chesed is concerned, so we have hilchos tzedakah and the nitziv in the Hagdamah, in the introduction to the Chofetz Chaim's classic work on chesed, said that all chesed that a person does cannot be a secular orientation that is somehow or other not part of the Torah. There is no morality outside of the Torah. So therefore, even when somebody does something which he understands is the right thing to do, to help a downtrodden person, whether it be bigufoi or whether it be b'mamoinoi, that makes no difference. When he does it, he has to have a kavanah. His intention has to be that he's doing it because the Torah told him to do it. He's doing it because the Torah told him, "V'alachta b'drachav, you shall go in the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu." HaKadosh Baruch Hu rachum, just like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is compassionate, afato rachum. So you have to do it because the Torah tells you to do it. In other words, we don't know exactly what goodness is. We don't know exactly what charity is. We don't know to what extent we are obligated, so therefore we have to consult the Torah Kadesha. So even to achieve these four ethical midos, b'shleimus, these four characteristics in toto, as we said, Rabbeinu Yoina told us if one is achieved perfectly, the other three are very easy to achieve. So all four are based on Torah principles, and these principles are timeless. We mentioned a moment ago, insofar as the Torah of the Shiur is concerned, timeless Torah values and halachas, and many times we have the halacha which teaches us the value, like Reb Ruven Grozovsky always said, the pasuk says, "Melamed lahoyel," like HaKadosh Baruch Hu was a teacher to help us, to instruct us, to guide us along the right path. First and foremost, within the context of contemporary society here in Eretz Israel, after Shavuos, so it would be good for us to reinvigorate ourselves with the Hashkafas HaTorah, which also is halacha. We'll soon see. And therefore, the first example that can prove this is the Mishnah in the Harias, where the Mishnah speaks about a case where you have two people that are drowning or two people that are held hostage. However, if you encounter two people that are drowning in a river, in a sea, you can only save one. Or there was only enough money that was assembled to ransom one. So who has precedence? A dilemma. We on our own cannot decide such an issue. So the Mishnah tells us, Yud Gimel Arias, Koyim LeLevi, Levi Koyim LeYisrael, Yisrael Koyim LeMamzer. If it's a Koyim and Levi, you have to know he's a Koyim or a Levi, you have to save the Levi. You have to save the Koyim, excuse me. If it's a question of a Levi via Yisrael, so then you have to save the Levi, a Yisrael and a Mamzer, you have to save the Yisrael and not the Mamzer. There's a conflict, there's a clash. What do? You're in a major dilemma. You cannot save whoever you want. Can't make cheshbonis, calculations, he's older, he's younger, married. The Chazal told us, Kain Gadol, Kain Hediot, Kodim LeLevi, etc. So now the Mishnah tells us something very striking. When is this true? When does this operate? When all of them are equal in Torah learning. But if you have a Kohen Gadol who is an Amoretz, not an educated person, and you have a Mamzel, Talmud Chochem, so the Mamzer, Talmud Chochem, has precedence over the Kohen Gadol Amoretz. Unbelievable Mishnah. The Gemara understood that Misvara, logically, it should be the opposite. And therefore, the Torah has to bring, the Gemara has to bring a pasuk from Tanakh. Why is this so? Why does the Mamzer, Talmud Chochem, have precedence over the Mamza Moretz. So we have a pasuk Yikarehim Pninim. What is Pninim? Mikayin Gadol Shenichnas Lifnai V'Lifnim. The Torah is more precious. It's to be cherished and loved more than a Kohen Gadol that is Nichnas Lifnai V'Lifnim in Kodesh HaKadoshim on Yom Kippur. So we have a verse in the Torah that tells us that's the halacha, and this is paskined in Shulchan Aruch numerous places. It's paskined also insofar as tzedakah is concerned, etc. But in Hatzolas Nefashos and in Pidyon Shvuyim, this is the halacha. This is normative halacha. So the question naturally arises. But what would we say without the pasuk? So we would say very simply, the Kohen, talking about Bezman Shebeis Mikdash Hayakayom, the Kohen Gadol, even though he's an Amoretz, should have precedence over the Mamzer Talmud Chacham. So the Shach explains that we're not speaking in extreme terms. We're not talking about a Kohen Gadol that's a total Amoretz. Totally ignorant. That does not mean that. He's a learned person, no question about it. He studies. However, the Mamzer Talmud Chacham is a bigger masmid, achieved more, is more dedicated in a not quantitative but qualitative manner, right? So he's also a bigger Talmud Chacham. So since he's a bigger Talmud Chacham, relatively speaking, than the Kohen Gadol, so therefore the din is that he has precedence and we save him. We're not speaking in extreme cases. Kohen Gadol also is a Yedei Sefer, but he's not on the level of the Mamzer Talmud Chacham. That's the explanation of the Shach. So the question is, what would we think without the pasuk Yikarei? The answer is very poshut. Of course, a Kohen Gadol Amoretz takes precedence. What's the reason? A very simple reason. Very simple reason. Because Klal Yisrael benefits immensely from a Kohen Gadol. The times the Beis Hamikdash was established, so Dafke on Yom Kippur, when the Kohen Gadol went 4 times Lifnai V'Lifnim, so all of the service of Yom Kippur, right, all of all of Avodas Yom Kippurim is only valid through the Kohen Gadol Amoretz. Who benefits from the Avodas Yom Kippurim? The entire Jewish community. Because the Avodas Yom Kippurim brings about atonement, kaparas. That's why it's called Yom Kippurim. It's not called Yom Kippur, because Yom Kippurim, there's many kaparas on Yom Kippur. There's kaparas of karbonis. The karbonis part, the sacrifice is part of the seder of avoid of the service of Yom Kippurim is kasha, is only valid with the Kohen Gadol. So Klal Yisrael achieves tremendous benefits from this Kohen Gadol. Our atonement depends on him. So therefore, from a purely practical point of view, Kohen Gadol does so much for the communities, so much for the Am Yisrael. Number 2, Kohen Gadol every single day brings a sacrifice, minchas chavitim, Matzisa Baboika, Matzisa B'Tzarayim, part of this mincha, this sacrifice, which is a wheat sacrifice. So it's part of the morning, part of the afternoon, and it's mechaper. And he's the first and foremost person that can have a right to do all the avodas during the year. All of these karbanas bring about kaparas for Am Yisrael. So we become enriched. We don't have to suffer because we have atonement for our sins through a Kohen Gadol. So he's an Amoretz, he's on the same level as a Mamzer. On the other hand, a mamzer, Talmid Chacham, unfortunately, he's very unfortunate, but he's the offspring of an illegitimate conjugal relationship between Chayve Krisis. Not his fault, but he's a mamzer. And the Poskim say that mamzer Talmid Chacham that has precedence of being saved in ransom does not have to be a Rosh Yeshiva. There's no chilukei din, there's no conditions attached. Does not have to write chiburim, books. Doesn't have to paskin questions. Doesn't have to say a shiur in a yeshiva. He's somebody who is almost anonymous, sits on the back bench of the base medrash, and arduously learns through Shas, half of Shas, from morning to night. But on a practical level, we have no benefit from whatsoever. So if it would not be for the verse, we would say that a Kohen Gadol, Amoritz, takes precedence over a Mamzer Talmid Chacham for the very simple, it's almost simplistic reason that the Klal Yisrael needs him. He contributes practically great benefits to Am Yisrael through the Avodas HaMikdash, especially the atonements and the kaparas. And from this Mamzer Talmid Chacham, we have no benefit. So what's the answer? Is it wrong or is it right? We don't know. That's what we would have thought. But the pasuk tells us no. Yikarehi mipnim. It's more valuable, more precious and dear is Talmid Torah than a Kohen Gadol. It's an Amar, it's not on this level of Torah. So we have to come to the normative conclusion that this is the Aleph Beis. This is the fundamental belief that we all have. We Jewish people believe Be'emunah Shleimo, with a complete faith, that every single bracha, shefa v'atzlacha that's in this world results from Talmud Torah. Talmud Torah keneged kulam, learning the Torah, of course, has to be in the proper spirit, of course, has the right midos, but afterwards, that which people learn Torah arduously, laboriously, reach high levels of Talmud Torah, they become Talmidei Chachamim. So they're the ones that bring every single good tiding, every single blessing, every single good influence, every single success into this world. Now you'll have people in America or in Israel who are multi-billionaires, plenty of them. You have billionaires. Warren Buffett is a billionaire. So he thinks that he made the money. Mistake. His money was granted to him by the Hashgacha Elyono because people are learning in Lakewood. Because people are learning in Bnei Brak, people are learning in Yerushalayim. And the harder you learn, the more dedicated you are to learning, the more devoted you are to learning, the more you renounce your own personal comforts for steiging and learning, the greater your Talmud Torah is, and the more you support everything that happens in this world. Now, if we ask ourselves, after we know the emes, so practically speaking, even though we do not see it, we do not perceive it with the naked eye, but Jewish people were taught by our sages, Talmud Torah keneged kulam, every good tiding comes from learning Torah. In Eretz Yisrael today, most secular Jews do not believe it. They scorn such an ideal. They ridicule it. Question is, do we B'nai Torah believe it? We don't see it, and today if you don't see it, it's hard to believe. But do we feel it? Not sure, but we have to believe it. And therefore, we have to dedicate ourselves to learning Torah for the sake of the entire existence of the world. So something happened to Doilam Torah, so unfortunately, we are inviting a calamity and a total disaster. The Riyah Kodesh explains this was mentioned by the Zohar on a pasuk in Shiur HaShirim. The pasuk in Shiur HaShirim states, Shishim Hema Malachos, there are 60 Malachos, Ushmoinim Pilakshim, and 80 maidservants. The Alamois Ein Mispar, and Alamois, we don't know what it means over here, Ein Mispar, there's no number. So the Zohar says, Al Tikrei, Alamois Elo Oilomois, worlds. Ein Mispar, there's no word, there's no number. You can't number it. You can't restrict it numerically. Al Tikrei Alamois Elo Oilomois, says the great Zohar, with the explanation of the Riyah Kodesh. What does the pasuk mean in Shiur HaShirim? Shishim Hema Malachos. There's 60 tractates of Shas, 60 Mesechtes, Ushmoinim Pilakshim, and 80 Toseftes. The Alamos Ein Mispar, don't call them Alamos Eloi Lamos, B'diyoev Mesechta Chada, of the 60 Mesechtes. Yoev Loy Oilamos Ein Mispar, he builds Oilamos without any restrictions. This is a mystical concept. He builds this world and he builds worlds in the other world. Boine Oilamos Ein Mispar. If he learns one Mesechta of the 60, one tractate of Tosefta, one of 80. Says the Riyah Kodesh, from here we see from the Zohar that what establishes the world, what brings in good fortune, treasures into the world, people that finish a Mesechta, Talmud Torah. This is something that we have to strengthen our belief in, something which is difficult because we do not see it, we do not in any way perceive it in the practical sense, but this halacha taught us that. In a practical sense, Klal Yisrael, even though we don't see it, has a stronger hashpah, maisis, practical influence from a Talmud Chochem who happens to be a mamzer and is just a man anonymous, more than a Kohen Gadol Hamaretz. This is number one. Number two, we don't have too much time. We have another Yisoid from Shiur HaShirim, of all places. The pasuk says, "Ketapuach ba'atzei hayal, kein doidi ben abonim, etzilo echimareti v'yoshavti upilyo mosek l'shiki." So Chazal say, the Medrash says, "Ma tapuach hazeh ketapuach ba'atzei hayal." An apple tree we find in the forest. So Chazal tells us, "Ma tapuach hazeh." Ein boy sale. It does not have any shade. An apple tree cannot provide too much shade because the leaves are very small. So on a hot day, say the Chazal, everybody runs away from the apple tree because they're looking for shade. Apple tree cannot provide shade. So this is a reference to Matan Torah. Kadosh Baruch Hu presented the Torah to Bnei Esav and Bnei Yishmael, and they asked what's written in the Torah. So to Bnei Esav, HaKadosh Baruch Hu replied, "Lo yisirtzach," also the murder. To Yishmael, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu replied, "Lo yisignoifu." So they said they're rejecting the Torah. After all, Avram Avinu blessed, Yitzchak Avinu blessed Esav al char b'choticha, you'll live by the sword. You'll live or die by the sword. Ishmael was blessed by Avram, Perado, wild person, wild people steal. So they rejected the Torah. Yocholaf Yisrael came, so maybe the Jewish people also rejected the Torah. Because I'll say, we'll just repeat it. Ketapur Batseyaw, came Doidi Bein Abonim, Kadosh Baruch Hu, among all the Bonim, right, is like this apple tree. Ketapur Batseyaw, came Doidi Bein Abonim. But this apple tree does not provide any sale, does not provide any. So therefore, Klal Yisrael were the only ones that accepted the Torah. Yochalaf Yisrael came. Maybe the Jewish people would like to go. Yep. Answer is no. B'tziloi chimanati v'yashafti piri mosak lechiki. B'tziloi, in his shade we sat, and we were delighted and we desired it. Upiriyoi, and the fruit of this apple tree, mosak lechiki, is absolutely delicious, sweet to our palate. Beautiful medrash. So the Mefarshim, not Niskuna, asks a simple question. How can Chazal say, Tapuach Hazeh, this apple tree ain't b'tzeil, does not have shade? The pasuk it says, B'tziloi chimariti v'yoshavti. The Jewish people sat in the tzeil, and they loved it. They were delighted by the shade of the apple tree. So Chazal said there's no shade. Unbelievable. Number two, does anybody think that the Jewish people did not accept the Torah? We have to come to Shiur HaShiurim to tell us that says Klal Yisrael, v'chimarati. The Umaysoilam rejected the Torah. So we're the ones that accepted the Torah. We know that the Jewish people are the chosen people because the Torah was given in the house Sinai. The Gemara comes to the conclusion that the word Sinai comes from Sinah. Aramaic, Sinah, Samech. Nun Aleph is Sinah. Says Rashi, as soon as the Jewish people accepted the Torah, so anti-Semitism was born. We're going to be the hated people of all time. Esav Sainias Yankif. Despised people. Kuzri wrote a book called The Kuzri, subtitled The Despised Religion, the Despised Jewish Religion. So no one in the world who has any minimum education can doubt the fact that the Jewish people are the chosen people. They're the object of pathological hatred. In the course of thousands and thousands of years, nobody suffered more than the Jewish people. Pogroms, Holocaust, deaths, torture, tormenting to this day. Because we accepted the Torah. So how can Chazal pose the question, Yochalaf Yisrael came? They were just like the Goyim. They rejected the Torah. That was the Havamina, that was the original thought, and we need a pasuk to tell us that Klal Yisrael accepted the Torah. Unbelievable medrash pliya, simply amazing. The answer apparently would be that the Goyim, Bnei Esau, and Bnei Yishmael rejected the Torah. So we make a mistake. We think that this is detrimental, that as if the Chazal is speaking derogatorily about the Goyim. No. It's a praise to the Goyim. Bnei Esav is praiseworthy because when he heard Lo Sirtzach, he understood clear as the day that he does not have the koyach to overpower his Yetzer for murder. He can't do it. So that which he rejected the Torah, he did not want to accept and become committed to the Torah, was a good kavanah. He was well-intentioned. Because he knew he could not overcome it. So it's better not to accept it than to accept it and rebel against the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So they didn't want to rebel. Bnei Yishmael, same thing. They told Rabbeinu Shlomo, we have a good intention. We don't believe that we can overcome our Yetzer for Geneva, for theft. We can't overcome it. It's part of our DNA. And therefore, we have to reject the Torah. In other words, Bnei Esav and Bnei Yishmael rejected the Torah with a good intention because they understood that their good life consists of robbery, theft, murder, and manslaughter. And there's no way they can overcome it because this is what they live for. Al charbechot tichye, your chiyus, your whole life. Chaim chiyusa, the whole vigor of your life. The entire satisfaction of your life, the good life, as they say today in America, here, revolves around murder. And we can't change. This is the way it is. You take away that midah from us, we're as good as die. They'll die before they can change because this is the way they are, and this is the way they understand it, this is the way it has to be, because this is the way they will have a good life. That's for sure the Jewish people accepted the Torah. Nevertheless, the Jewish people, according to the initial understanding of the Chazal, also thought that the Torah is a contradiction to a good life. They will have to overcome their Yetzer Hara. And they accepted the Torah because, like the Chazal say, they have the schus avos of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and because of that, so the Jewish people, despite the fact that they held that this is an inner contradiction to the good life, Esav understood well. Shmuel understood it very well. Nevertheless, we will overcome it. We will try our best to overcome it. We will sacrifice ourselves for the Torah. Answer is, it's a mistake. The Jewish people, when they accepted the Torah, they didn't ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu what's in the Torah, didn't interest them too much. And the reason is because the Jewish people, by the original commitment to the Torah, made no sacrifice whatsoever. No. They didn't have to overcome their Yetzer, their evil inclination, because they had no evil inclination. They came to the intuitive understanding that what is Olam Hazeh, what is this world, what does it revolve around? Not materialism and not power over others, and not destroying things that don't belong to you. That's not a source of gratification. That's not a source of happiness. The real, genuine, authentic happiness and glorification that a person could have in this world is to commit himself to Torah. Because Torah is sweet as honey. Tamu uruki Hashem. You taste, and you'll say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Torah is good. This is the good life, the moral life, the timeless value of morality, of Torah morality, the values of Torah, the proper hashkafa of Torah, doing the mitzvahs. This is the greatest source of simcha. This is the greatest source of satisfaction. The Jewish people made no sacrifice whatsoever. They saw that the Torah is essentially the good life. This is the real, this worldly approach. Everybody's concerned with the good life within the context of this world. In this world, this is the right way to approach living. B'tziloi chimaditi. What's the answer to the original question? They found the sale. They found the shade in the apple tree. There's not that much shade, but that shade is unbelievable because that shade produces sweetness. And the Paris, Masak Lechiki, doing a mitzvah, Simcha Shel mitzvah, learning Torah. This is the good life. This is the purposeful life. This is the moral life. This is the life that will bring us to the eternal life. Nothing can be better than this. It's the greatest privilege and greatest pleasure to be abiding Jews. This is what we're here for, and this will bring us to eternity. Ramesha Feinstein said, it's awesome for a Jew to say it's difficult to be a Jew. Also to say that. What should he say? I'm a chaya. You have a purpose. Everything that is good is awaiting you. There's Hashem, there's going to be a Mashiach Tzidkenu. Those that are not here will have a Tchias HaMesim. The soul is immortal. There's Hashem Yisbarach. If we have to suffer a little bit now, that should not in any way take away from our deep, deep understanding that this is the good life, this is the sweet life, this is the happy life, and this is the life that we can honestly feel that we're living a very honorable, glorious life dedicated to Torah and timeless values of Torah. Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody who listens.